But let's just rewind. Let's do the end of CSGO. Because obviously, like I say, right, here's the thing. I actually expected to some degree, Maniac, like I said, like sort of like one of the main storyline threads would continue. So it would be one of the following, like maybe Vitality wins the last LAN. By the way, it would be a cool storyline for the whole Zonic thing, which we maybe get into. Then obviously, what if G2 wins another LAN? By the way, that would be interesting. It always is, because of the whole Huxley thing and they're winning everything, but they didn't win the major. Obviously, then you have the fun ones, like ENCE is obviously right there. I mean, turned out now it hasn't worked out, but there's a world where people hoped Heroic would bounce back. Like, these are all the obvious ones that we're all looking for. No one had on their bingo card, Maniac, MOUZ wins EPL Season 18. And I've got to say, just to open the topic, mate, even though I understand, I have heard from a whole bunch of pros that yes, almost everyone, including the second everyone gets eliminated, was practicing CS2 and is playing CS2 all the time. And everyone who has IM Sydney is already looking to the rest of the circuit. And like, essentially, there's no transition period, like we said. Even with that said, at the end of the day, you know that famous line, as every fucking Vitality fan invoked, of you can only beat who's in front of you. Like, you can't choose for, like, FaZe to get through, so you play them. You can't choose for Monty not to beat Vitality, so you play. You can only beat the teams you play. Even with that said, even with every asterisk in the world, mate, the lineup of teams this squad beat is meant. It's essentially everyone except Vitality, guys. Like, they just, like, this, like, what you call in poker, you call this, like, the murderer's row, where it's like every player around you on the table is like a mega player. Like, there's no, like, easy money. Like, this actual run on paper, I might criticize them as a team, but mate, this is mega legit. Like, look at these. Like, there's no fluke here. Like, they actually had essentially like 5 different teams should have eliminated them on paper. So I have to give them mad props. Like, to actually win in a way, like I said, for their storyline, it's cool as fuck. What did you think of this win?
No, I'm right with you. I think this was one of the most legitimate runs I have seen for an underdog to lift a trophy, in terms of like not fluking your way through an easy bracket, not avoiding the challenge or avoiding the favorites. When you think they've beaten FaZe, G2, ENCE, and Navi in a row to lift the trophy and win the grand final 3-0, by the way, in the best of 5, like, there is no one on earth that can contest how legitimate that win was. Now, when it comes to the context, I am aware of it, I acknowledge it, but I don't want to use it as an excuse. The way I see it is, you had a chance to put all your motivation and grab that extra 10% what other teams didn't, and you did. Good for you. Good for you. Get that money. Get that Inter Grand Slam notch. Put yourself on the championship title. Yeah, of course you had to. I mean, if you look at the tournament and you look at some of the very top dogs behaved, yes, obviously there was something along the line of one foot on CS2, one on CSGO. We can also probably talk about the whole format, like some teams that played the group stage a few weeks back didn't really know how to use their time in between. That's all true, and it has some value to it. But what MOUZ did was fucking beautiful, like really beautiful. And it's got multiple ways you can look at it that are interesting. From Yimpat as a magical, sudden, super reliable anchor, to Torji actually playing well on LAN against top opposition, which I've been a very adamant critic of for a long time. Mega step up. Shuhei now 3 months in the roster, having a beautiful play style where everything is kind of clicking. That's beautiful. And for them, it's also like a huge boost of confidence moving into CS2. Like, can you imagine that's how you close your CSGO chapter? And now you know, hey, this can actually click. This can actually work. We can actually look forward to CS2 together. So this was tremendous from MOUZ. They destroyed everyone on multiple different maps. And if other people want to cry about the context, then I just call it excuses. Like, these are just excuses. Some teams were not ready to fight. MOUZ were.
The thing is, though, I actually do think there was some, like, this is why it sucks if you're like a fan of esports, in the sense of like you want it to be like a movie, because what you're always going to feel like if you're a casual fan, I'll tell you right now, is you're always going to think like me or Maui Snake or Pimp are like hating on the underdog when they come up. Like, it seems to you like, right, they come out, they establish themselves, and then we just criticize them and tell you what they're not going to do and how it's overrated or it's a fluke or whatever. But like, I have to in all context of talking about this MOUZ team, the problem is this, right? Just on a pure statistical level, Maniac, if you look at the stats of their players during this tournament, it cannot hold, mate. Like, 4 of them were a 1.2 rating, put it that way. 4 players. As in, even Exertion, who plays like a mega hard role, and then Jimfat, like you say, is like essentially like a supportive element or something. Even he was a 1.2 rating, mate. Like, that won't hold. Like, I'm not even going out on a limb by saying that, guys. Like, you have to understand a 1.2 rating is like a good event for fucking Twists or something like that. Like an actual star player level material guy. Like, it's more like this. To me, the key thing is this. What you've always got to do with teams is, bearing in mind, like this team's played two lands, for example. They played Cologne and they played here. So Cologne, they were shit, really bad. And then now they were like way too good. So first of all, you take an aggregate of the two. You know, you grant them like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. To me, the main thing about MOUZ is this. I think it's actually just like, you need the biggest pieces to stay. So the good news is this. The actual two pieces that really impressed me were actually Shuhei and Torzi. Because I already know Frozen's really good. I think Exertion, actually, he was already an obvious addition when they added him to the team. He was good last year. And then the Gym Hat guy, I don't really know, to be fair. He definitely overperformed here. Like, I don't believe he can do that again stats-wise. Look, it's more to me, stylistically, can he fit in the team like he did? Because I'll even say, if you think, like, in the finals, the best example of the Gym Hat guy being, like, overrated. Like, even as you would see on the POV, his kills, some of the kills were like, how's he getting those two? You know what I mean? Like, you'd see him just get like killed. And by the way, here's the problem. If you ever watch, he's not some guy who has like bonkers aim. It's not like you're watching like, holy shit. Like, he actually looks like a fairly normal player. So when players like that are just shooting people, it's like that might not hold. Like, this is one of the best aimer games in the world. So to me, the key thing is just this. Tosh did look way better, like you said. Like, he essentially, it looked like he actually did almost like fully redeem himself for all those last year of play. Because I know what you mean. Like, online or in like a random group stage game, he would always just tear it up. So all the MOUZ fans used to get super hyped. But like, I could literally have set my clock by him just like disappearing in the playoffs, if you know what I mean. Like, it was just guaranteed that you get him into like a semi-final of a big LAN. You could put any AWP on the other side, he's going to disappear. And he himself, obviously, he's commented about, he understands that he's had those problems. But the angle was, like, Shuhei was his guy before. Well, first of all, that looks like it's actually bona fide now. It looks like it works. Like, I was even thinking this myself the other day. The Imma guy also had his mega performance under Shuhei. Like, he actually just looks like the Shuhei guy. He's got a pretty nice set of results so far, mate. Everyone he's working with is looking awesome. He's bringing like extra performance out of him. Yeah,
and on that note, we actually we talked to a couple of the MOUZ guys in different interviews in Pro League, and something that came out that I thought was interesting was, you know, this whole conversation between Dexter and Shuhei and Torji on AWP. Yes. They actually told us that Shuhei was much more controlling. And this might sound a little bit counterintuitive, because you might think...
Yeah, Torji wanted to be sort of micro or something, right?
So, exactly. So intuitively, you might think, oh, but the AWP should have freedom, and that's how he's going to perform. But actually, from talking to the MOUZ players, it looks like it's the other way around.
Right.
He actually needs Shuhei to tell him, listen, this is what you're going to do. This is what I need you to do here in this sequence of play. These are the picks you can go for. And apparently, it's just working better. So maybe here it's a matter of just a fit in terms of play style and structure and the help that's needed, because he definitely delivered. I don't know if he's going to maintain that level. When it comes to Yimpat, I obviously have my doubts as well, because this was, as you said, an incredible, just for like his position on the map, to have these kinds of numbers, it's impact all the way. But one player that I'm very impressed with, and I want to talk about a little bit, Exertion, because if you remember, prior to all these roster changes, he had pretty high ratings in MOUZ. Like, he was one of the players with Frozen you could always rely on. And when they brought in Shuhei and also brought in Yimpat at some point, I feel like he took so much on his shoulders in terms of entry fragging and like basically taking risks. You can look at the numbers. He's got like Art's level of entry fragging attempt. Like, he's literally 30 to 40% of the time he's the one first in. And if you look at Cologne, he was one that suffered one of the biggest drop in performance, because he was just sent to the slaughterhouse round after round after round. And now it feels like either one, he's gotten better at it, or two, their protocols are better. Probably a mix of the two, if you ask me. But he's actually, he'd done much better with the same level of aggression. So if he can actually mature into that role...
X-factor for you.
Oh, holy shit. Like, if he can have that kind of success with that playstyle, that's like a huge, it's literally a bank heist for MOUZ if they can get away with him in that level. So I'm going to keep my eye on it for CS2. What I'm also interested in, Duncan, is how is this MOUZ going to perform in a context where every team is hungry? Not where people are kind of fleeting between CS2 and CSGO. We don't really know what's going to happen. Let's bring goddamn Major or whatever, or a full final, or a Cologne, or a Katowice, where everyone is on 100%. And then we're going to test this. But the first few signs are extremely positive, you have to be honest.
And also, even though it was a much better crowd setup, it still isn't a big Cologne type event. No, you're not in a giant stadium where, you know, the big call out. And like, I don't think people understand just the walkout to go to the stage for a big stage match is already going to set people on edge and make people who are rookies nervous and thinking about things. That's why I actually love that aspect. This is what's funny, because I'm a purist. I used to think, I don't care, they can play a tournament area. No, I had to learn eventually. I actually want that pressure so that I can see, does the player break? Does he perform overperform? Does it, like, that's why, by the way, the rare times you have the player, like some Pies is exactly this, where they're like overperforming in those scenarios. It's like, this is fucking cool, dude. Like, if anything, this guy's sort of like, he gets the buff when he's in that setting, whereas normally everyone gets the nerf, even some great players. So, no, that angle does mean, like, obviously I have to temper, like, expectations a bit. But I'm with you. If you think of the players that are good in this team, like, essentially what you're saying, like, I agree, is if Torji already, he's the AWP, needs to play at this. So, okay, let's imagine that's plausible. I think actually, if you looked how he played, it is plausible. He might have slightly overperformed, but actually, if you looked how many different games, he looked good in every series pretty much, mate, against every AWP as well. So, I'll give him that. And that whole Shuey angle, I think, is a cool one. In fact, I'll get to that in a second. I've got a little tangent on that. And then the other part is, Frozen, I already know can play this because he's done it for years and he's just been getting better year on year. So, that one's fine. We're sort of there. Shuey's a good IGL. The key thing is, like you say, if Exertion can actually frag out, now you've got a super powerful team. Because think about it, right? Those 3 riflers I listed don't even have any overlap in their roles. Like, one's the pure AWPer, one's the sort of lurker, and then one's the aggressive entry. Like, that's actually perfect. Like, we're not even dealing with a scenario where it's like, oh, like, on this map, you do this, and then on the other one, I do that. Like, there's no dispute. Like, it'll just all work. So, the one thing I want to bring back up, though, is when you said that thing about Torji, because here's the funny thing, mate, is even though to some degree that's almost inarguably obviously a weakness of Torji if he needs someone to sort of help him and tell him what to do, because the problem is, like, as I'm sure fans will know, the absolute best AWPers of all time, they didn't have that. Like, spoiler, there wasn't even coaches and IGLs doing that shit. Like, back in the day, people like Guardian and Kenny just took whatever peak they wanted, and then they just mega at the AWPs. If they get the kill, they get the kill. If they don't, they don't. But I think essentially this just shows, in my opinion, how modern Counter-Strike works. Because if you notice, that is also way more the players I'm listing there in the era when people played very loose default Counter-Strike. And it was a lot about, like, individual players. Like, even though individual players have their place now, especially if you are, like, obviously Simple and Z, who are the exception, you give them the green light anyway. I don't think people realise, in the modern day, as an AWPer, it's not that Torji doesn't know how to get AWP kills or how to AWP. Like, I'm sure in an FPL game, he's fine, Maniac. His problem is this. Does he know, like, for example, what's going on the map that he sees as the IGL? Does he know, for example, what is the entry pack doing as I'm taking an AWP shot here? Does he know when he should do a rotation? Or when should he stay on the site and see if they come and hold at the last second? Or should he actually quick rotate? That's actually the sort of stuff where an IGL or someone who's more cerebral can level your game up and have a massive impact. So that's actually why I'm very hyped for the Shuey angle there, mate. Because like I say, first of all, he obviously got my attention with that major run at the, like, if people don't realise, like, he almost got to 3 maps in a pretty major final and even beat Hero. Like, that already tells me there's something there. But then when I see the transformation of this Torji guy, like, the joke is, if people don't know, because they were together in MOUZ NXT all that time ago, this is why the Torji guy got into MOUZ. Because when he used to have this guy way back, he was actually nuts when he was at those We Play Academy lands. He was like the best player, him and Exertion. And then unsurprisingly, they both got the call up, but it looked like the angle was, oh, it's pressure that wrecks this guy, right? Oh, that's his problem. He wasn't ready for the step up. It turns out maybe he just didn't have his guy that was sort of like helping him figure out his game, essentially. So I think that's actually a cool storyline, because as long as the Shuey guy's there, there's no problem. You can have that Torji. Yeah, you can have a guy tell you what to do if you want. It worked. It looked awesome to me, mate.
I think also one last angle on it is that even though today's Counter-Strike is a bit more structured and optimized than the times that you were mentioning with Guardian and Kenyas, there is still space for individuals to catch on fire, but you need to help them get there. And I think with Torji, we've already established that he's not going to get there on his own when the game just gets a little bit tight and close and pressure. So why don't you just help him gather a couple of key kills at the beginning of the game, because you've helped him, because you have a couple of paths he can follow, a couple of moves. Because once he gets there, I mean, even in Pro League, I saw him take mega risks. But of course, if you're on 15 kills after 10 rounds, we know how momentum works. We know how confidence works. So as a leader, you try and get people to that point as quick as possible in every game. And if he needs a little bit more micromanaging, fine, just do it. Then once he catches on fire, let him go. You can follow the rhythm. So we'll see if he can maintain that kind of performance. But the question that I have, Duncan, I'm going to throw it over to you. Do you think this MOUZ roster survives whatever craziness is going to happen in the roster shuffle between now and, let's say, the beginning of 2024? Or do you think they're about to get absolutely just completely robbed and pulled apart? Because it is a question that they might have to ask themselves now with all the uncertainty around.
Well, here's the funny thing, actually. I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's an interesting point. Because, funnily enough, I actually think that they might be in luck. I actually think it might work out for them to keep the roster. And the reason I say that is I think it's actually a bit like what's happened with Ents, where Ents actually, because they were so quick with the Nerds lineup to get to the top and get this shot, they've essentially maximized their window. Like, put it this way, if you look at how they play at the moment, some pious ones here, neither here or there. Nerds, I'm almost certain one day will be in like a G2 type team. Like, he just looks too good, and like he's been so good out of the gate on this team. I think one day it's inevitable he will be poached a la Spinks and, like all the classic players. But the difference is, so not going to be right now. Like right now, no one's gambling and replacing Nico with Nerds. Well, that wouldn't be the role, but you know what I mean? Like no one's doing that right now because he's still so young in his career. He's still actually proving it right now. So if you're Ents, you actually probably can run it through to the next major, I'd imagine, without losing players, because essentially all you had to really defend was you had to just guard Snappy leaving in the last off season. He didn't. So okay, cool. Like you could probably run this out. I actually think for similar reasons, MOUZ might actually be able to keep the team together till next year. And the reason I say that is this. If what we've just spent like 10 minutes discussing makes it sound like it's not that these are all just individually like incredible pieces that you can take out like you'd want to with the Spinks or something and just put them into your team. Like actually from what I'm saying now, for example, I wouldn't go and, based on what we've just talked about, even if I really like his game, I wouldn't sign Tosh on his own. You know what I mean? Like we just spent 5 minutes explaining why. Similarly, maybe some of the other players like the Exertion guy, like I just said, all his, like, essentially, he's just played in MOUZ his whole career. Like, I don't know what he's going to do in a different squad. Like, I don't know, essentially, what does he need to comfort? Does he like to be proactive? There's so many X factors. I feel like the only one that I'm scared about, the obvious one, is Frozen. Yeah. Because he is ready. That's the difference. Like, whereas I said, like, the Nerds example, like, he's still sort of, like, coming up to the boil. It's like, it's not obvious you have to sign him and that he's a slam dunk. The problem is this. Frozen actually is. Now, I will say, I don't go as far as Maui. Maui's does this thing, which, fair play, a lot of analysts do this, where what you do is, when you notice someone's potentially becoming a great player or they're going to be the next great player, you try to get on the train really early so you can say, I was there. Now, here's the thing. I say everyone does it because I've had some pretty good ones myself. I don't know. Simple, Nico, Divisive. I've had some pretty good ones, is the point. You know what? Every now and then I do hit boys. Not everything I say is bollocks. But the point is, if you can ever get in early, some people might know, the other one Maui did this with was your Kindar famously. Sometimes it looks awesome when you're earliest to do it. The problem I have is this, right? I don't actually personally, I don't have Frozen as like my top 5 rifler yet or whatever. Or maybe he's like 5th if he is, I think he's like improved year on year on year, and I do think now he's ready. Like, put it this way, if FaZe Clan wanted him today, I would tell them that's a fine move to make. You can make it, as long as it's the right role, give him the spot. I don't personally think yet that he's necessarily going to be like Rop's level, because I think Rop's can hit a very high ceiling on his game, but I'll give him the chance that like he's tracking like that. Like, again, maybe in a year, or maybe in a team like FaZe, he could be that sort of a player. So I think that's the main issue for me, is whether he stays. And quite frankly, I'll just throw this out there. This might seem weird to people, but people forget that Rops stayed an extra year in MOUZ. You remember that? Yes, because everyone forgets that he had like a similar timing where he actually had to renegotiate during the online era, like 2020 or whatever. And I remember going to him and basically he sort of told me, like, I'm just going to stay. I'm not even actually going to test the market. Like, I'm just going to re-sign. At the time, to be fair, this is why I'm bringing this up, because it's the same team, MOUZ. It's also because this is where people don't realize. One of the weird things about being an org is, even if the history of your org, like MOUZ traditionally was more of a medium-sized org, they were more the one that would pay, like, let's say, like a $12,000 or $10,000 salary, right? Which isn't at the levels of, like, back in the day, the VPs and the G2s and the Norths of the world, but it's not as bad as, like, Big or fucking Ents, the teams that at the time were more budget. But the difference is, people have to remember, in the modern day, Counter-Strike's like soccer. You don't all get the same salary. So what they would do was, if you were Carrigan or you were Rops, then you could get like the $28,000 a month. Like, we'll match, or maybe we'll even pay slightly over. That's why there's that story, remember, that Rops says he took like a pay cut to go to FaZe. Right. I'd imagine it was like a 3K pay cut when he says that, by the way. I don't think he took like 20K off. It just means he probably went from like 28 to 25, if you know what I mean. So it's a totally fine pay cut. But my point is, I actually think if you're someone like MOUZ, this could also work out in that sense, which is, one, I get the vibe from Frozen that he actually might be in the vein of Rops, that he might just stay another year, because I actually do think, by the way, people like him, I hate this narrative, Maniac, maybe it's more in your world, I do think he believes of that thing, like, but I'm a MOUZ player, this is my team, and I know the guys, and I've got, like, we're like family. That's just how your some players think. And then the other angle is, I actually think if they're smart, you just pay him individually a lot, mate. Like when you renegotiate with him, if I'm them, by the way, I'd explicitly extend his contract now. You know what I mean? I'd come in and go, look, essentially Frozen. Here's the thing: it's only me and you in the room, mate. We don't have to like talk about Tosh or the other player. Like, what do you need? Do you need 30k a month? Or I can give you it, because here's the difference. If the others, and here's the other thing people don't realize, some of the others might even still be on the MOUZ NXT contract. They might be on 7k a month or something. So if I can have Torgy and Jim Hart for this much, maybe I can pay you 30k Frozen. So I think I'm sort of like quietly optimistic they can keep the lineup and maybe get to the next major. Because by the way, as an aside, I do think it would be really cool if they could. Like, what do you think, by the way? Are you scared that they'll lose players? Do you think that they'll get picked apart?
Well, I will say that relating to your explanation about Robs, I maybe underestimated the finances they could have behind them. Like, maybe I see them more limited than...
I don't know now. To be fair, now it's also everyone's in the esports winter, so maybe there isn't now. Who knows? But just they have set a precedent that they've occasionally been able to do it.
So if they have the ability to financially not make it too hurtful for people to stay, I think that's already one very important point.
Because you know what I mean? Like, even though fans will think everyone would do the Flames and jump straight to a Vitality, you know this. There's some players that don't. Like, some players sort of have a mentality. I mean, you can even just say it's a comfort mentality. Maybe they don't want to go and be the guy on the hot seat in FaZe. Maybe it's better to be like the king of MOUZ, if you know what I mean.
Well, the only aspect that I really consider is the player's trust in his own project and team, right? I think for me, that's number one. So if you're Frozen, and if you are now, let's just pretend that MOUZ has been a catastrophe for 6 months, and there is no light at the end of that tunnel, and it just feels like they're getting bombed out of every whatever group stage or maximum quarterfinal, then I think at some point, if you're a competitor, you just say, screw it. I'm just gonna look around. I'm gonna look around, just sniff the field a little bit, see what's up. Maybe someone is interested in me. That is a different scenario now. Like, there's straight up peaking in terms of performance and confidence. So this might just be like a protective sort of force field around them. But I don't think this is going to last for too long. So I think you're on the money when you say if you're MOUZ now, maybe try and extend that contract, because you have him at a moment where his trust in this project is probably very, very high. And as long as he has that, I don't think there's any reason to take a risk, because we also have to realize, maybe not at name value, but with the current ecosystem of Counter-Strike, I don't think there are that many other teams that would be an immediate direct upgrade.
There's another good point. It's also the other ENCE scenario, which is you have to actually be joining a team that's definitely better than ENCE, otherwise what's the point in doing it? You know, exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. So they got that going for them, which I believe might protect them until very likely the major cycle. And then once Copenhagen is out the window in March, I think we might have to rethink where they're going. But for now, I think they're going to be fine. I will say, I believe they will be tested. I think probably a few offers might come their way, either for Snappy or for Frozen.
For Shuhei.
Personally, I think. I mean, Shuhei as a leader as well. Like, there's basically three to four actually, but let's say 3 solid people that could be poached here and there.
Oh wait, you meant to say Toshi. You said Snappy. I'm pretty sure you meant Toshi.
Right. I meant Shuhei actually.
Oh right,
Snappy.
no, okay.
There you go. The leader.
It's all good. It's all good.
So the leader, definitely in the crosshairs. Frozen as a star as well.
Of course.
Surely there are people out there interested in these.
Because the other angle as well for me is this. Look, I get that now he has just one pro league, to be fair, so that does raise his stock. The thing to me is this, though, Maniac. I feel like you're slightly safe on the Shuhei one, because to me it's like, how did he not already end up in a team? Like, people could have had this guy after the major, remember? Like, to me, that was a sign from the G2s of the world. Like essentially, we're not quite ready yet. So it's like, here's the analogy, right? Basically, Shuhei going to the final of the major, Maniac, was like the end of the Phantom Menace, right? He's like Anakin Skywalker, and then all the top teams, they're like Palpatine, and then they just essentially go like, oh, young Skywalker, we will follow your career with much. But what they're basically saying is prove it, which, by the way, he might now have done, but like, essentially, because by the way, I don't blame him on that one. I actually did say myself, even though, like, look, I'm a like sort of a low-key, I wouldn't say a Huxley hater, I'd say a Huxley skeptic. How about that? I'm a healthy skeptic of Huxley. When he wins, I'll give him his credit. But essentially, if I was G2, I did think that was a bit of a gamble. Like, I don't mind if they bring in Snappy, mate. That's one thing, Maniac. But the idea they were going to sign Shuhei, I think that's the problem with that one. I think not only was it a gamble, but it actually, I think they were scared off by thinking what happened when they had Alexi B, who was a more established player. Like, I think for IGL, teams don't realize, I don't think there's that many squads that are going to gamble on IGL. Like, that's not a role you really want to bring in the guy with, like, essentially we might just throw 6 months away and then we have to reset all over again and buy a new guy. So in that sense, I actually feel like the Shuhei one, that's why I say I think the window's there, because I was worried he would just get signed from Gamer Legion immediately and then he wouldn't even ever get a chance. So in some ways, by the way, I also think it's basically the perfect project. Not only does he have the history with the players, but as we've now seen, and this is what we can transition to talking about, dude, because of this run, and I look how they did it, and I look how the players fit all their roles and the different mix they have. Dude, you know what's mad? This is where, like I said earlier, even though I tempered all my expectations in some areas, like individual players, I actually think when I saw this run, this reminds me of events coming up. This looks legit. Like, I even looked, dude, at the maps they were winning on. They were doing all their work on Mirage, Inferno, Nuke. Like, those are just real maps, guys. Like, that's not even, like, they're not, like, some team, like, you know, these stories, like, dude, how many teams now have we had to see? Like, fucking 9 and MIB, it's like, oh, they're, like, just really gods on Oni, Vertigo. It's like, they're not doing that shit. It's not like, you know, it's like this is, like, the team that secretly figured out Ancient and no one else knows how to play it, man. They're just beating everyone on everyone's map picks. Like, those 3 maps I've just listed, you'll win a lot of fucking best of 3s if you can win on those 3. Like, that's the meat and potatoes of Counter-Strike. So that's a really positive sign. Then, like you said earlier about the idea of if you were someone like Frozen and you leave the team, as well as money, you want to go to a better team, right? Dude, if I'm being very cynical and I just look at the top 10 right now, because bear in mind, obviously that finals run's boosted Na'Vi, who I don't believe is as good as MOUZ, by the way, right? If I look at these teams, Maniac, the only teams I can say for certain are better is like what? Vitality, G2 Ents? Yeah, I would probably stop after those 3, mate. Like right now, I can't say FaZe is better. Not only directly can they lose to them, but like I actually think if you look how they play, they're not as good right now. If I go down Heroic, spoiler, we're going to get into this. We don't even know what they're going to be like. They're falling apart. Astralis is like sort of a bit of like, I thought they were a bit of a fluke run at Cologne. You go down the list, mate, after that, you get into teams like Monty. I think people forget, like, there's a lot of teams haven't worked out yet with the roster moves. So if I look at the team right now, why aren't they like the 4th best team, mate? I think they probably are. I think that's actually a fair ranking. Like, if in the next tournament, like, I would say that's a plausible thing that could make the semis of the next tournament.
Well, the only question to that, because I think on one hand, when it comes to the gameplay and the structure, I'm a firm believer of what they did in Pro League. Like, none of the Counter-Strike they were playing, to me, felt either too gambly or too risky or one-sided. I think this was an actually very complete and well-furbished Counter-Strike they played from map control and individual decision-making to very good strategies and quickly executed. In that vein, I think the Snappy to Shuhei comparison is super valid in how he was calling. I saw him at some point having like very like fast pam 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 type call situation on the T side, and then I saw them slow down as well when they needed to. So this to me is something that you can replicate event to event to event. If you have that vein, it's fine. The question is, Duncan, are some of these individual performances just one-off? Because if they are, then it changes the whole narrative.
Spoiler alert, we
cannot tell right now. We cannot say. We have to wait. If they maintain, let's just say 85% of that individual performance, then there is no reason for MOUZ players to look somewhere else. Unless one of the teams you've mentioned suddenly comes to the door and say, G2 says, hey, listen, Shuhei, do you want to be the leader in one of the most notorious org in the history of Counter-Strike and play with Nico, the best rifles in the goddamn universe? Then that's a different topic. Yes. But other than that, I don't think they have anything to envy to any other team. And to mention as well, knowing the potential shitstorm that might hit Counter-Strike in this whole transition period, if you actually stick to your gun and you work on your team play while everyone else is figuring out where you're going, this is a moment where you can get a huge leap. Yes. You can get ahead of everybody. Ants, MOUZ, these teams, they can really cement their position while everyone else is figuring out what's going on. They can just work on their own game. They can figure out Counter-Strike. It's even more so because CS2 is coming out the window. So there's going to be a whole lot of things to learn from, to adapt, to be curious about, to work on your gameplay and all of that. If you don't have to worry about your roster, you just worry about your gameplay. And I think this could be a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, you could actually argue, by the way, like, as you're saying, because now CSGO's ended, but they've been together like a short time and they're getting the lineup going, and they even have past history. Like, if you think of the teams that are going to make moves, like there's a rumor Vitality might make a move. We know Heroic's making a move, Stralis making, like, no one knows in CS2 how those moves will work out. Whereas I'm with you, like, they've already got a call. Like, that's why the actual teams like this team, G2, and that's why in CS2, spoiler, I'm just going to expect these teams already be the best still. Like, I don't really see a reason yet why they would be bad in the new game, even if the game's different. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.